Amplification. Amplification is a term we can use to describe a story being spread beyond our immediate reach. It's amplified if it's picked up and shared by the community. But we can't take it for granted that a story will be amplified. Those stories which are amplified tend to be ones which resonate. Perhaps they're highly authentic, perhaps they're highly timely, they're very relevant, they're of the moment. Some stories just fall flat on their face. Sometimes that's okay, because sometimes a story is a story we tell for ourselves to help us get our thinking straight. But if we're trying to understand social systems, if we're trying to understand how to be effective as social leaders, then we need to understand what amplification is and how it works and how we can earn the right for our stories to be amplified. Well, amplification happens within our communities. If we broadcast a story, if we just push it hard and make it loud, that's not really amplification in a social sense. It's amplification in a broadcast sense. Social leaders don't rely on that broadcast model. They rely on telling stories which are relevant and timely and easily shared. They're amplified by the community themselves. Before they're amplified, of course, they're filtered. Social communities just share the stories that they want to share. These are the things that we need to consider as we develop our social leadership capability. We have to learn how these things work. And I really believe that. There's no simple formula. You can't read a book on viral marketing and create vastly amplified stories. At least not unless you're very lucky or perhaps very authentic in what you do. Instead, we have to learn what our voice is. We have to find our authenticity. And then we learn how amplification occurs. Amplification is really quite an ephemeral thing. It's quite hard to understand it. I find in my own practice of working out loud that sometimes I'll write something which I think will be picked up and amplified widely, and nobody touches it at all. It just falls on the ground. And sometimes that can be surprising or even demoralizing. But then it makes me think about, well, what's the gap between what I'm interested in and perhaps what other people in my community are interested in? Conversely, sometimes I know I can shape a story that will be amplified. There are certain phrases I can use or techniques of writing or illustrating that will cause a story to spread, and I know they will. But I don't want to write that story because it might not be the right story for me at this time. It's a funny thing about storytelling. It's a very personal activity. At least it is if you're an authentic storyteller. And as a social leader, I think you have to be authentic as a storyteller. Organisations can tell organisational stories, but social leaders tell their own individual personal story. But they also help others to curate and share their story. So sometimes we look for people to amplify our story, and sometimes we amplify the stories that other people share.